Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Wagner. Been in the farming business probably well over 30 plus years. Been in Bakersfield all my life. 2019, after about 18 years of working with a wonderful farming company out of Fresno, developing here in Kern County, which they were also out in the Fresno, west side Fresno as well. After about 18 years of that, developing and the compassion, because everybody has to have compassion about what it is that you do, regardless if it's ag, selling equipment, or whatever it may be. If you don't have compassion, especially in farming, it doesn't have to be necessarily grandpa's ranch or family, but just having compassion, because it's almost like a relentless day. It just seems like you don't accomplish much, the tasks that are out there. So in 2019, I decided to take a little time off, neglected family for a while. That 18 years was a toll on everybody, so took some time off, rest a little bit, and said, where do I see myself? And I've always said it, in the pistachio business or almonds, it's ongoing. Every day is ongoing. Whether you're talking almonds, you've got those stages of whether it be fall, spring, summer, winter. There's a phase of the cycle, and pistachios the same. Where can I help? Where could I find myself? Do I want to go back with another large company or small company? Because I've worked with the father-son. So I've traveled to Coachella, and same thing, father-son, whatever my dad told you, scratch it. This is the way we're going. So I've done that. I've been there. I ventured it. Tremendous education by all. It was never a mistake made, but a real good education. 2019, what am I going to do moving forward? As I mentioned, I'm in my 60s. I'd like to think maybe with Mr. Camp I can slow down. But working with good people along the way, I do have to say the Camp family has made this transition in 2019 somewhat simple for me. And he probably forgets what he told me. You can have anything you want in the stores, but just promise me do what you say you're going to do. I figured that's pretty easy. I can do that. Now the hard part is getting clients. So we started a primarily almond harvesting company, WBH Ag. It's a partnership. Pretty much of it's been a little bit relocated now, so it's pretty much just the first letter. But working with good people, good clients, I think we found our fit. Then it transpired into, we call it management. It just sounds maybe wordful, sounds a little bit better, but in that it's what are your needs? And in 2019, how can I help growers? Being on the farming side all my life, starting out as a kid, youngster, mostly case equipment at that time, but getting into the table grape deal, this is where the John Deere thing came from, and it just snowballed. Always liked green. But now having the opportunity to purchase equipment, help clients, now it becomes that phone call of, can you come check my irrigation system? Can you meet with my PCA? I'm going to buy a piece of property. Can you walk me through the due diligence process? And we don't think much about that, but in today's economic world, there is no error for the fault line of doing it wrong. I've seen what it is to plant 3,000 acres of almonds, and it was a shotgun cowboy show, and knowing it's wrong, we're going to take all of it out before the 5th leaf year and install double line drip. So, team member, I was on board, might have disagreed with it, but that's where we found ourselves. I've seen error, mistakes, and then the remedies. How do we retro? How do we make it better? So I'm getting those phone calls quite frequently this year with that 2 inches of rainfall right in the middle of nonpareil harvest. Devastation. 2010, I didn't panic too much. Most of my growers cooperated. We're gonna stop shaking, we're gonna stop sweeping, let's see where the storm takes us. And many friends in the industry, large, small, stop shaking, stop sweeping. I've got this, I've got this. Well, I've been there. Anybody can go back, I don't know if there's any old enough in here, but short as 2010. I just don't remember the day, but it was maybe around, Mr. Camp, you probably remember, it was probably around the 12th, 15th of September 2010, down the Maricopa area, and it outlining areas, but a lot less, about 1.75 inches in about 45 minutes. Non-pearls were all gone. I would say maybe 10% of the Monterey's might have been left out, but pretty much your pollinators, Butte, Padre, Fritz, still out on the ground or on the tree. That year in 2010, I lived to see almonds float. Almonds go down Old River Road pretty fast. That year alone, with one company that I was representing and working with, 4.4 million pounds lost. Back in 2010, what was the return to grower price? Nothing like it is today. Wasn't $4, good 3 numbers. So figure the loss. So I try to incorporate that. Helping growers, not to err on the wrong side, but they're very strong-willed people. Not that they're doing it wrong, because what we're going to talk about even today in pistachios, how many wrong answers are there and how many right answers? It's not a right or a wrong. It's what fits the application. So anyway, 2019, we started this operation, helping growers manage daily task, supplying labor, employment, irrigation is kind of one of our big spills with companies. But our main focus, we harvest a lot of almond acres. With that rain, you could only imagine what the phone was like. My harvester's left, he's gone, won't come back. My harvester's not showing up. My harvester pulled out and said he won't be back. So we received a lot of those phone calls. Try to build relationships. So that's what we're here today, is relationships that were established some time ago, back when Mr. Bob McLaughlin was front and center. He really was a little confused between the 4-row picker and seeing that code shaker come online. He didn't really know how he was going to manage it, but he did very well. He did very well, and he was a salesman with a fighting appetite. He made sure the grower was taken care of, and that relationship would live on, and very good. Anyway, I passed out, if you were fortunate to get one of the, you can go online and get that, you can get different years. University, sometimes a little bit behind, so what you see there is kind of what's new to the world. The pistachio orchards that I could tell you that I cut my teeth on was the pistachio orchard that just resides right behind Kern Machinery on Lerdo. That back in 2004, 2005, I remember, I think it was a Chain family owned that. There was a few almonds just right behind the shop. And those almonds did fairly well. Flood irrigation, grow water. There was about 231 acres that was further back that was on buried at that time, buried double line drip. Didn't do very well. Plug emitters, plug hoses, poor water management, infrastructure, what was the reservoir like. So I'm gonna try keep it as on task online as I can, talk about the equipment world. Because I like to share what I've learned in my education and actually how to start from preparing the ground to selecting varieties by location. And we'd think, well, what's the difference between Buttonwillow and Maricopa or Taft or the Tejon Mountains? There's a tremendous amount of difference, tremendous. And for your success for this investment, let's face it today, if you go out and buy the land today, open land with water possibilities, maybe 15 to 17,000 an acre, your development fees on top of that. What I'm getting at, there is no room for error. We can't assume that this might be a good location. Well, maybe the new varieties, Golden Hills, Lost Hills, with pollinators such as Randy, Tajon, Famoso, will be just a perfect fit, and the wind prevails through here. Some people not being involved in farming would think we're probably pretty nuts. Before you even go out there, you put weather monitors, monitor the weather for about a year or two, at least, maybe even 3 if you've got time. Backhoe every grower, whether you're 150 acres to 5,000 acres, better have a backhoe. Dig down what's below, what we can't see. Very important, so we don't make those mistakes. And that's one piece that I'm pretty proud of. You can go look as far as west as we went with it, where that Buena Vista ditch is, and how far to the east across the I-5 we actually went. And you'll see, well, why didn't they just square it off? And it would have been easy. But if you go out with backhoes, you go out with equipment, you do soil analysis, because we'll just say during the growing stages, nut field primarily, almond trees as well as pistachios, what do they need? 50 gallons a day, 24-hour period. Soils that can handle that, has drainage. What if it doesn't have drainage? Where's that water gonna go? Let's develop that nut into a productive return on your investment, then take a lot of water. And in California farmers, we take a tremendous lashing about the amount of water it does take. Some people say, well, it's not true, it doesn't take that much. It is what it is. And you can have any amount of fertilizers, fertility programs. If we don't have quality water, back in the day, 70s, Pioneer Gold rootstock for pistachios. How long will they live? I don't know. We'll just say today, from planting a pistachio, take a guess. There's no wrong number. 35 years, 300 years. You'll get some literature from what they do in foreign countries and how long those trees have been there. I've seen some trees around the Rich Grove area of Delano. Trees are probably over 100, easily. And they're still into production. But what makes it difficult in today's era of time is spacing. Is it traditionally 19 feet and the trees are 18 feet? There is no wrong, unless you go to the density where almond growers have found themselves today. Well, we could go 20 by 14. And 7 feet of the bottom of that tree shades out. Where's that fruitability? It's gone. You've erased it, never to come back. Now that we stacked them so tight, you shaded out each side of that tree, so all of your fruits, your products at the top of the tree. Now we need a device big enough, strong enough to shake that product 40, 50 feet up and bring it down. Because once it gets that tall, it's not a shake anymore, it's just a wave. Product stays there. But anyway, pistachios, you see what you have there. Take time and look through it, because it is a good opener in your communicating with growers or clients that you're currently selling equipment to currently, whether it be harvesting equipment or just implements, tractors, correct horsepower. It's a tool and a timeline. You know, what's happening first? Developing, planting, and how we got there. It'll tell you about pruning, chemigation, fertigation, nutrients over the years, course of time. When do you actually start harvesting a pistachio? When do you get that first crop? A lot of these new varieties, it's like in almonds as well, a lot of hybrid. Even with that, we're still not getting that first crop till about year 5, 6. 5, we feel the energy to go out there and start shaking, get something off the tree. But really to get a crop, it's year 6, 7, you can start counting. Really when you get to year 10, you know what you're going to do the remainder of the life cycle. So it's these varieties that are out today have been very helpful. The older varieties that are out there, has been traditionally the Kern variety with a pollinator called Peters. Because a pistachio is deciduous and it goes dormant, like any other tree, but being deciduous, meaning that almonds have flowers, almonds have varieties that help each other maintain a baseline of production. Pistachios, you have male and female. It's almost like in tree fruit. You have plums, you have a male female. They pollinate. So today varieties, Golden Heel, Lost Hills are the two new. There's others. There's one out called Gumdrop, but it's not quite, I don't want to say it's ready for the industry, but it has some issues. So Golden Hills, Lost Hills, the nice thing about them, they shake well, and they're your early variety. So you could have in a select area, you could have Golden Hills or Lost Hills coming off even late August. Pistachios are generally always wrapped around September. This year they're going September into October, finish up. The old traditional variety, Kern being the base, not 100% of your footprint of your acreage is necessary for second shake. But because of its cycle of development and its variety of rootstock, it's just a little bit cumbersome. It's not all is ready at once like an almond. You go into nonpareils and you shake, you get them down. Pistachios, a little different. With these new varieties and these rootstocks, compatibility, UCB1s, there's a few others out there. I don't want to give you too much data because it is too much information. You could read it, look at it, and it's why is it? Sometimes it's that location that I mentioned earlier. Where do you want to plant? What is your location? What are the soil likenesses, types? Sandy loam, well drained, are you on clay? So that's the reasoning, high nematode counts, disease. Pistachios through their early year cycles, up to year 7, are susceptible to about just anything. It's like having COVID. It's just something, it's not going to kill you necessarily. It can, but it just creates infectious disease problems that you encounter excessive expense early on. So these newer varieties seem to be compatible with airborne pathogens, soil pathogens. There's things called botrytis, botrytis. There's a number of diseases, and even insects. You know, leaf-footed bug came out, didn't think too much about it, kind of looks odd and funky, but the damage it can cause on both sides, both spectrums. I got an almond grower last year, nonpareil alone, 12% damage. Can you imagine? Nonpareils, say your average is 2,800 pounds per acre, and just times that by 12% loss because of an insect. Same issue with pistachios. There's other issues with pistachios. The mealybug issue that came in probably 10, 12 years ago, if not longer. It was a hitchhiker, got on. Growers are notorious for farming other commodities and using other equipment and bringing in. So it's kind of like a hitchhiker. Did it actually come from that commodity or variety? No. Table grapes in Kern County really didn't get infected with the vine mealybug till a lot of our growers coming from Kern County going into Coachella Valley and bringing product back to the ranches, equipment. There's that hitchhiker. And we started our own situation. But with the university, it's helped us get through a lot of these issues and problems that occur. But anyway, if you want to, who's got the?
You'll just press the space bar on the keyboard.
Jay, don't you have one of those?
The ones I could find are not compatible with that. So
Yeah, so there again, you're looking at, I've given you some of that information, orchard development. What is compatible? what root system would we use? Just because the industry, any nursery that you would go to would say, gotta have UCB1. That's where the backhoe comes in. And with your PCA going out, or a soil analysis individual, is going out and actually, we call them backhoe pits. If you've got 160 acres, we'd probably do 5 pits. Take your outer areas and a center core area. Maybe if it's a piece of ground that's been in the farming unit for a number of years, and now we're taking it from a annual crop now into a permanent crop, we still want to check and see. We've had carrots on it. You see a lot right now in Kern County with the tomato cannery prices being the way they are. We're seeing almonds coming out. We're seeing tomatoes go right on top of them. There are some issues there. Number one issue, if you're signing up for the air board, all of that grinding has to go onto the ground and be incorporated. I've seen it happen this past year. Growers did that. I don't know how they're going to harvest it, because there's zero tolerance at the plant side on the processing of tomatoes that will receive any of that byproduct. So there's going to be issues. That's where if we talk more before we rush out, I call it the cowboy with a 6-shooter. We're just going to go out there and we're going to make success, and it doesn't work that way in today's economy. So development, very important. Know your soils, depth of soil. Some people, roots aren't going. I'm not talking about roots. I want to know where this water's going to go. So some people say 5 feet's unnecessary. Roots are only going to go between 3 and maybe 4. Possible, but don't you want to know what's below that? What minerals might we start migrating towards the surface? Sometimes people go out and they hire a commercial guy to come in and run a D8 or a D11. Next thing you know, he's got a slip plow. Why you got a slip plow? Know why you have a slip plow on that plow. So if I want to change the soil structure, it works as an elevator. Slip plow on a single shank is bringing maybe that soil that might be more compatible versus what's on top and trying to push maybe salinity down. So development, really important. Talking about pistachios, I just left this up there because this was somewhat of a template that you've had with the almonds. So pistachio almonds have so much likeness, but it's quite a bit of difference as well. Tree life, there again, Mr. Camp might know, but production-wise, I've seen orchards 35 years still going. Economics, it is getting difficult. We don't have as many processors to deal with. So we have what we have, and sometimes that price structure is held there when a single processor is handling 8 to 1,000 growers. So it makes it a little difficult. But variety selection, there again, Kern has just been one of those old heritage varieties. Pioneer rootstock, the pollinator would be a Peters variety. Those are just for production ag, that's just a good fit. Production-wise, there's a lot of myths out there. I remember 2004, almond price is going to get into $5 a pound, and we're going to be millionaires. When it got to $4, it made more havoc than I think it did at $3. Caused too many problems. But variety selection, what is your portfolio prior? Do you have any previous pistachio acreage? And is it all Kerman? So now maybe we want to get our employment, our labor force, or maybe our contractor that's going to supply the equipment to do it. So that's where the Lost Hills, Golden Hill varieties that seem to not have that same, because pistachios will have that common off-year yielding. So year on, year off. Well, with pruning techniques, nutrition applications, probably what you've heard on your almonds as far as defoliating a tree. Pistachios today, you're going to see more and more. If any of you travel out towards where Boswell made a large development out there off of Old River and herring, you'll see what they do. That could probably, I don't know the acreage, but as far as a crow flies, it's probably short of 10,000 acres. And you'll see different cultural practices. Not every field will be treated the same. Reason being, zinc sulfate will be applied. Almonds, that was kind of a tradition back in the days. But expense starts getting there, application. Some growers, whether they're 100 acres, 500 acres, don't see it within their wheelhouse to have their own equipment. So they're relying on custom applicators or sprays, harvesting, and those fees are getting up. I'm in the business, and being a grower all my life, it's challenging and difficult because I have that much compassion. And there's some people from out of town that come into town, almond harvesting, pistachio harvesting, and $400 an acre, take it or leave it. Well, with that 2 inches of rain, you take it. Just gotta get this product out. I've seen growers this year on almonds, took them at least 35 days to get nonpareils right to where it could go into a processor. You try to share that information and knowledge, what to do immediately. 5 days after that rain, you better have all your sweepers lined up. And if you had anything in a pile, sweep it down. Let it sit down for about 3 to 4 days, roll it back over. Any of you been around the hay industry or hay business? Back in the day as a teenager, felt good about raking that hay that morning, only that afternoon before they could bale it. It rained, now we gotta rake it the other way. Now with conditioners, because in 2010, all this new equipment that's out there for the industry, conditioners, whether it be a Flory, self-propelled, whether it be an Exact, those devices were not there in 2010. And I witnessed it the day after the rain. And wonderful out in the Wasco area, not too far from the nursery, had gotten their staff and converted their Exact harvesters, as we did back in 2010, because it wasn't a conditioner built, and actually built I called it a draper. We built it right over the back elevator of the harvester. So if we had anything windrowed, we would take that harvester, attach that draper onto it. So what it was doing is taking the product, dropping it right back down onto the ground without having to sweep it. This day, he said, Brad, they build this machine, I'll give you some information on a jackrabbit called a prepper jack. Well, then the next guy down the street trying to sell you a piece of equipment, well, you're gonna put a lot of wear and tear on that, so you might not wanna do that. You might wanna get this machine to do that. It sounded good, but we stayed with what we knew because it worked. Having what's out there today, I mean, I look at these shop yards and especially Delano. I don't know how Delano gets all that equipment in that backyard, but I'm telling you what, when you guys put that fence, gate, lock, and security, I understand why. Because those people that live in those little houses over there, they're probably wondering, what's that guy doing over there? I'm sizing it up, and I got to call Greg, and Greg, that conditioner over there, Delano's got one.
Question for you. Lifetime, 35 years, just for comparison on almonds, right? 25 years, peak is at 16. What's peak at for pistachio
As far as
before it declines in yield? Because it's alternate bearing, right? So how do you, what is
today, what you're doing to offset alternate bearing,
well,
or
at
because
what
you're
year?
35 years out, you're still yields aren't dropping off because your yields, say from the time you plant, year 1, to year 5, possibly starting your harvest to year 6, you're still not really, even year 7, you're really not into any portable production yield that you want to account for. Maybe the accounting team needs to know that for depreciation values and whatnot, but really, you're not starting to know what that orchard's going to do until about year 10, as far as your harvesting goes. So year 10 to year 35 sounds like a long ways out, but it's not, because you're setting the milestones there. That's when you're starting and counting over. There is no necessarily right answer, wrong answer. It's just what you've experienced. There's probably some literature, there's probably some gentleman out there that has a specific, that he's farmed that land in state of California. California still, and I think it's important when this subject was brought up to me, it's important to know what it is you have in your wheelhouse and you see growers what their needs are. And that's tough, because I farmed all my years. In 2019, I started this. I'm no different than you. I'm trying to take a product along with knowledge and sell it in a way. And there's a lot of closed doors. Grandpa didn't do it that way. Third generation, fourth generation, it's really hard until you have 2 inches of rain and your phone won't stop ringing. You don't have enough equipment. There's not enough, and even pistachios. Pistachios for almonds is one of those cursors of as soon as they start harvesting pistachios, your truckers, your trailers get converted and attention goes that direction. And reason being is pistachios with their natural oils, their skin, same as walnuts. There's a certain time, once the product comes off the tree, the plant, there's a timeline to get to the process. So if you see pistachio harvesting, it seems to be ongoing, regardless of the 40-hour work week, regardless of overtime. Once the product, the commodity is ready, it has to continue to move. What happens, what are the negative impacts? Staining. It'd be like almonds in a ring. Are we gonna go in shell cells? Are we gonna go meats? That's made up for us already. And it's gonna be a darker piece of kernel, not as appealing to the marketplace or buyers. So pistachios, it's a moving, ongoing. But I still feel I don't necessarily have the right answer for you, and I don't think there is a right or wrong. You're still in production up in that 30-year range. Most of you people are traveling as probably as much as I do. I got a 2019 and it's just short of 200,000 miles. You see a lot of things. Tell me when's the first time you saw a pistachio on a side? It might have been sold from a large company to a smaller grower because it fits. He doesn't have to go through the developing costs or expenses, but it's something that he can maintain with commodity pricing. Is that longevity of production? So again, I'm not here today to tell you this is facts, this is the right answer, wrong answer. There's so much variability. Farming in general, there's a tremendous amount of variability. I don't know if that helps you. So variety selection, irrigation type, knowing your area, knowing your soils, knowing the soils. Does the soil have any retention? Is it able to hold soil moisture in that soil capacity? Urban area is one of those that you can't get enough water. But if you manage correctly, I'm still a big fan of amendments. There's growers out there that aren't, they're expensive. You may have your own equipment. You might have a 90 horsepower tractor to pull a spreader. You may commercially hire it done, but amending the soils to help with water management is what I'm getting at. Not just, gypsums, not composting, green waste. Well, how do you incorporate it? Proper management of irrigation, double line drip. Fan jet, I'm not a big fan of, but if we have a situation where water retention is hard to capture, and if we run an acre foot in less than 72 hours, it's gone. So we need a device, fan jet, to distribute the amount of water that plant and soil can manage through that profile before you lose it. Fan jet can put out a lot of water real fast. You'll see some almond orchards, because generally our frost in Kern County comes when? About bloom time. When do rains come? About bloom time. So you'll see almond growers with double line drip, and you'll see a third line with a fan jet on it. What they're doing is almost like citrus in a way. We're going to run water, especially if it's well water, to somewhat heat up the orchard. during that frost. Pistachios, we want them to go to sleep. We want cold. They're almost like a cherry. They need the chill hours, chill units. So the more the better. It helps set the crop. So when we have these short years where we've had drought, and I'm talking severe drought, and there is no state water, there's no federal water, you're relying on groundwater, makes it very challenging. With that heat, trees don't go to sleep. So therefore, they may lose their leaves because we might have gone out and put a zinc sulfate spray out to have the leaves, because once it'd be nice if we had a picture, next time we will, but where the leaf blade, where it's setting to where that bud is, when that breaks off, that's when the tree is acknowledging dormancy. If it doesn't get that, people that came from Israel came into Kern County and said, hey, we've got these products, we'll have your trees green, almond trees green, all the way up to December. Had business. Tree looks good, it looks healthy, it makes sense, carbohydrates and buds. But if that leaf blade doesn't sever itself, the tree doesn't go into dormancy. Almonds don't need that as much. They do need dormancy. Look at their cycle, and look at how late we are on the backside. People are still picking up Monterey's. So what does that do for next year? Stresses the plant. When you see that early bloom, you know the tree's got stress. But pistachio irrigation, single line drip, emitters, what growers will do is put an emitter, if it's an add-on, or is it purchased. So you can purchase double line drip or a single line drip with the emitter already inside the line. The hard part about that is the expense. So in that development, to help curb cost, is sometimes in that development phase, we'll put a single line out and we'll actually put an online button emitter right at the tree base for the first year of its being, saving some money. Some issues with that I've learned in citrus development. Accounting, banking, this is what we're gonna do. We put in a single line. Year 3, we put in the second line. You had a few trees that wilted and died. When we excavated those, which way the roots go? It's almost like a jaded root. Jaded root in citrus, or any plant, it's not gonna live, it's not gonna make it. Having that water pattern toward the root zone. Root zone is always the canopy of the tree. So where does the water need to be? See, some growers will put the single line in a pistachio, they'll put it right down the tree line and leave it there. Every year, we'll add an additional emitter by maybe 32 to 36 inches, depending on what our pattern is by our spacing. So we're 19 feet across, are we 17 feet, which is not bad. I like to see 19 and 18 down the tree row. Pistachios, you'll notice most of the time versus almonds, the staggering planting. Pistachios, you'll notice, are pretty much square. Off-center, diamond. Most pistachios you'll see square, uniform. Pistachios, always pruned. Almond, budget's tight, commodity pricing isn't good, we can get away with a year or so, but hang on for year 2 or 3. Then that cost of cleaning that tree up is expensive. But a lot of it's to do with this economy. The grower just doesn't have the fundamental finances to do it at that moment. And again, with $15, $15.50 an hour, I don't think anybody should be minimum wage or minimum wage in an 8-hour day, 5 days a week. It's pretty much poverty, so I don't like that number either. $20 isn't gonna fix fast food either. But Vanjet's not wrong. I have a personal preference. It's with pistachio and diseases, it's just going to be a problem. If you've got soils that with drainage, you might need that. But now your water management through that life, the cycle of the season, whether it's from bloom through bloom to basically nut feel and then harvest. 40, 50 gallons tree per day. How much water can I get out? Orchard removal and replanting doesn't really, in pistachio world, doesn't really, I can't really say anything there. I've not, even in my days of being in that Delano, Rich Grove area, when Pioneer Nursery was right there on, what was, I can't remember the cross, Garzoli, and that goes to show you age, right?
Versus in Browning.
Yeah, and that goes to show you how, you know, small our community and farming is when that nursery was right in our backyard. I mean, it was in city limits. And it's pretty much anything today is further north, nothing really south of us. It's north and east, north and west. For these Duarte Nursery, one of the bigger suppliers. But, all right, I'm not computer friendly.
A question on the fan jet pistachio. I know in the almonds it creates a microclimate for high humidity and causes disease. Is that similar in pistachios?
Same.
Even though there's not much more.
Identical problem. And because of the disease in pistachios, the susceptibility, everything's so, until that tree is very aged and up and growing, I mean, even then there's problems. I was fortunate in that development to have the university there. We went through salinity trials. We had trees, I mean, literally plugged in and feeding them water into the bark, monitoring canopy growth, just monitoring everything as it moved. Soil or water uptake, temperature, cold with salinity, what was happening in that orchard. Again, that's why I think you'll see if you travel out of here and you go out today and you start looking at paying more attention to pistachios, you're gonna see either a single or double. Fan jets are just not, I'm not saying they're not there, and I'm not saying it's not, that may be your only source. That's where I go back to development. Develop in those areas that are conducive to do what you need to do. Don't put yourself in an area where I've already got one hand behind my back and maybe even tied to one heel. The diseases are real. Botchferia, to control that, it's going to be by sprays and by pruning and getting rid of that wood. Some of these pathogens, whether they're airborne or soil, they'll reside there. And when conditions are right, they sporulate and they're back to the tree. Almonds, Phytophthora, they just see too much water and they get sick and die. You give them too much water, sick and die. You'll literally see the sapping come out of the tree. But to control the disease in pistachios like Botchferia, you can spend anywhere between $6,000 to $8,000 an acre trying to control it, and that's still not a guarantee. So your irrigation watering system, the backhoe pits, knowing the profile. Does that soil have the ability to leach it, or is it going to hold it? There's some outlying areas that we can still, even with drought, purged areas. I've got a grower that went through due diligence on 500 acres, and there's a reason why J.G. Boswell and Mary Giovanni never planted that, and now it's in pistachios. And ladies and gentlemen, I kid not to, that soil's as white as that box. UCB ones, it's going to be, it doesn't work that way. There is no cure-all. There is no 2.5 gallons of Wonder that they sell that will make this plant become profitable in a production setting. It just doesn't work. So location, soils, you're going to be the button guy, right? Perfect. January activities that are going on. Pistachios, you don't necessarily see a big rush to get things, it seems like. Once harvest is over with, getting our water profile in pistachios replenished and getting them prepared for dormancy. Some growers will not do 100% in that application of zinc sulfate to have the trees go into dormancy. It's a forced dormancy. Some will just let nature take its course. But our refill, we want to get that done immediately after harvest. Reason being, the tree is taking in carbohydrates. If we were to go through, and we've seen it before, a early, Kern County frost, maybe in late November, you want that flow of water completed and stored as carbohydrates for the next year. So you won't see pistachios heavy irrigation during months of November, December, especially December, and even January. Late January into February, and again, I offer you to take a look at pistachio acreage just behind Kern Machinery out on Lerdo, and salinity was a big issue. And we would take either semi-tropic water, better quality of water, pH, ECs, then maybe a well. But if you had wells, water's water in those days. And we would go in there in late January and shut off early February, is leach as much of the salts out of that soil profile from the root zone, so that when that tree does wake up in March, that they've got a fresh start. And it's sometimes the same impact when you're planting an orchard. Do I plant flat? Do I plant it on a shallow berm? And the reason being, when you have a salinity issue, all you're doing is you're taking that seedling, that rootstock, and you're giving it an opportunity to expand itself in a freer environment, versus being planted flat. And if salt is an issue, or other minerals are an issue, you're at ground zero. But if I'm up on a berm, I'm taking it away, and it's actually like a potted plant, taking it away from that environment. So that's a chance to help it acclimate itself to the soil and get a good start, flushing the roots. So we've got mechanical as well. You'll always see pistachios, unless it's been abandoned. Pistachios are always pruned, and you just don't top and hedge them. But pistachios are topped, hedged, and hand pruned. That's somewhat of the technique and challenges with the alternate berry. How much wood do I take out? Well, if I'm on the up year or the on year, and our yields were, say, 5,000 plus pounds to the processor, I've seen a few growers will cross hedge. Literally go down an older orchard that's probably on a 19 by 18 and actually go across, not with the rows, but actually go across. These are things you learn in watching. Reason being is pistachio trees, even the pollinators, will eventually shade themselves out. Once you shade a tree out and you lose that lower growth, it's not coming back. So managing your canopy. So those are processes that are going on. Those are going to take anywhere from, we don't sell hedgers yet, but maybe. But mechanically and hand pruning, because of the density of that wood, the either self-propelled or a pull shredder. I've seen people with the PTO drives. Does it work? It works, but it can't. We don't need to refine it as almonds because the almond trash getting into the product, but we want to dispose of it to where that the ground can actually biodegrade it. So at that time, January and even into February, those phases are happening. Mechanical work, shredding is going on. There's a real nice raking device because of labor situation or the lack of labor. Actually, after the hedging, topping, and hand pruning, 3-point mount, takes one row at a time, doesn't ride up on the berm, it rides down, but it'll actually go through and windrow brush, where you could go right behind with the shredder. Something to venture into this year. But then those are those are applications that are happening. You go ahead and during dormancy, after those processes are met, or phases of cultural practices, we've got sanitation. So even in the months of January, once those, you might see some of your larger corporate operations pruning early in November to just get ahead with the amount of acreage they have. So what we're doing then is we're coming through and implementing, once pruning, hedging, hand labor work is finished, now we're coming in to implement our sanitation phase. Sanitation is basically shaking of the tree, is to get any of the residual nuts that are in the tree, called mummies. That there is you can't emphasize, and with economic times and difficulties, growers sometimes will hinge on the bet, I won't spend those capital expenditures on that. Well, you're just gonna offset costs from doing that phase of cultural practices. Now it's gonna become a catch me if you can, so to speak. Now we're gonna spray to control. Because any mummy that's left in a tree, pistachios, a little different. Pistachios can have, you might see it after harvest, especially on Kern varieties. You'll see the nutlets that are still on the tree. Some of those are hollow. There's nothing in them. So there is no food source, there is no carbohydrates for the navel orangeworm insect to overwinter. But even then, that's a hard, percentage-wise, we've done it, we've gone out and counted. We go out there and extract what's left over, how much actually has meat product in it, and what's just a shell. I don't care if it's 2%, it's too high. Pistachios and almonds, if we can get it down to 0% or 1%. And that's because of the navel orangeworm infestation.
What happens if you prune before the tree's gone dormant? You got a bad gun?
Yeah, I like to get ahead of the game on pruning, especially in Kern County. You can see California, but if we have pistachios north, it's even, they got cooler temperatures, anything above Fresno. Pruning early helps heal the wounds. It's not in dormancy. It doesn't necessarily, I've seen more injury caused by late pruning, total dormancy, no leaves on a tree, pruning a tree, now we have a wet winter, and now that injury is fresh, now with that water setting on that prune cut injury, now disease sets in. Because we're such a dry atmosphere, that earlier pruning, it heals, dries, the susceptibility is much less. How does it actually impact crop and yield? I don't have an answer. I haven't seen to that early pruning that it offsets it to a large degree. Sometimes we have to start earlier because we just don't have enough resources on the labor side. And a lot of the tree expertise labor gets taken in quite quickly. And then you're reliant on maybe the lack of knowledge of right and wrong. I'll move around a little bit. When you get to my age, Clayton, he's a long ways to go.
I'm greater than you are.
When you get to my age, these hearing devices, don't waste your money, guys. I'm telling you, ladies, Bose system, out the door. So those are the things that are happening. Getting the product. Once we have full defoliation, you don't want to rush out before then, but if we've gotten some pruning done, but we still maybe have a few leaves hanging on the trees, let's wait till that tree defoliates, and then let's get in there with the burn blowers, burn blasters, and clean anything. And we're wanting to do that after the shake. And that dormant shake, that sanitation shake also helps remove any of these leaves that are still attached. Once that's all off, we've got a nice defoliated tree, it's into dormancy. Berm blowing, maybe pre-emergents are going out by then, maybe we've had some wet weather. So those are some of the phases that are going on. Pre-emergent is one thing, but weed control throughout the season is a little different. Somebody says, well, weed control is weed control. No. At this phase, when we're at dormancy and we've completed our sanitation, blowing any of the residual trash, mummies that are on that berm, we're actually windrowing them by air force. So by moving that, we centrally locate them. And believe it or not, Joe Siegel did a real good study. Primarily, you'll see after harvest, you'll see growers will go out and disc their pistachio orchards. Springtime, after sanitation, you might see another disking. I always liked the, what was that device? Perfecta, 14-foot Perfecta that I don't see too many of them any longer, but any way of tillage. But Joe Siegel did a study on disking. A tandem Domrey's disc, didn't matter if it had stubbles on the front, smooth on back, incorporating mummies that have a nut still inside that shell is, again, food source for the overwintering of a navel orangeworm. By incorporating that with that disking, as much as 5 to 6 inches of tillage during the right time of heat units, they are able to overwinter. They pupate, they live there as a worm. Once temperatures are right, they actually fly out as a moth from 5 to 6 inches of ground cover. Then, back when we started looking at the flail mower, then we started when Larry was, what do you think? What do you think? Brushes, no brushes. What do you think? What size hammer? So at that time, there was no mummy mulcher as we see today, and the availability to have brushes on the front to actually help draw trash or debris into its path and shred it. Almonds and pistachios, you've got to get rid of mummies. Some growers will opt out. They're only going to pay on the backside. So instead of Gus going out there maybe 6 times during the season, it's probably going to go out there 8 times during the season to take care of navel orangeworm. The grower this year, neighboring abandoned orchard. Timely sprays, trapping, monitoring, mating disruption, border sprays. The almond area that was still in production around it, processor report, 12% damage. Even after that. So if you've got a neighbor and they're abandoning an orchard, stay in communication with them if you can. If you're supporting your growers and you know what they're going to be walking into, say, hey, you know, so are they going to get that? They're going to take it out in a couple of months. Well, that means we're going to go through pollination. You're going to lose your bees because they're going to bloom as well, even though they don't have water. So you're going to lose percentage on your bees. Then navel orangeworm's going to set in. By the time they get that orchard down on its side, they're there to. The insect is there. It's almost, just think of it as an imaginary, like cyber. It probably gets most of you guys. But just out there, I can't see it, but it's living. It just takes the right climate, the right time, the mating, temperatures, and now we've got it. This lady sprayed intensely. Good PCA, good people. You can't fight it. It's a fire in a winter. So cleaning your orchard, maintaining your orchards, having the equipment ready, available. Not all the custom guys have enough. Take on too much ground. Can't get you in a timely fashion. Everything we do in these permanent crops is about timing. There's a little fudge factor, but when it comes to disease and insect, it's all about now. Okay. March, your male trees. It's just funny that Pistachio orchard behind Kern machinery. Can't remember what year it was, maybe it was 2008, 2009. Very hot, very dry, December, January, February. It's time to eat already. I'm almost finished. The male trees wouldn't wake up. They didn't have enough chill. So what you had, instead of seeing this cluster form on the male trees, the female trees were already starting their process, and they had no pollen. So the male trees had not even set out yet. Devastating. The female trees were already pretty much probably around 30 to 40% already out and leafing. The male trees were still not awake. That's what you're seeing today coming back, I think, more and more. The zinc sulfate spray, forcing the trees into sleep, having them ready for dormancy. So if there is any, we have a cool, cold, and I hope this year is one of them. We need a cold spell. We had our rain, but now we need a cold spell. Cold spell helps offset disease, insect pressures that we might just live with year on and year out. You got herbicides going on. Again, these are more of a contact operation at that time. Most operations, a lot of technology out there today, and it's pretty exciting to where you got the, what do they call them, seekers, where actually the photosynthesis, saving in product. Okay, next one. They just in a hurry, supposed to eat. So there again, there's that disc I was talking about. And there again, there's no right, wrong, meaning timing. Oh, does it actually happen in March? Is it more in February? Is it more in April? It's just a process. You see how clean the berms are? The trees are already out. This could be more of, just looking at it, more of a summer or so photo there. See the double line drip? That's a good application. Away from there, the trees don't necessarily like that wet foot syndrome, I call it, where the base of the tree is actually absorbing the moisture from it's getting wet, and that creates a port of entry for disease and insects. But that's pretty much what's going on at that time. Culturally wise, your equipment wise, like I said, disking is one way of incorporating cleaning. There's also, like I said, that there's other tillage equipment. The Perfecta is one that I really liked. It had had that flexible chisel sweep on it, or a shank. Then it had like a basket that really did a fine job, and also leveling. Pistachio orchard floors aren't anything like almonds, where you want them about like this floor. And reason being is just a good harvest. The harvester is not an almond harvester is not a potato digger. And we find that a lot in the custom business. No floating, it just makes problems. Then you have a poor harvest. You leave product behind. Okay, next. Now we're into May. May and June, this is what we're experiencing. At that time, there's again, it's mainly May, June, July. There's not a lot of labor intensified work. That's your pruning and whatnot back in January, February. Pretty much here is equipment. Your sprays, it could be anything from foliar sprays, nutrition sprays, the disease sprays, depending on how much rain we've got, what disease we're looking at. Again, there's airborne pathogens, so quite a bit of spray, April, May, June, into July. Navel orange worm's the biggest one. Next. Told you I like to talk. It's a phenomenal machine, and in the custom business, it's hard to get a grower to even try one. He may have it himself, but to actually get that in there, get it done, he might just have his regular flail cup mower, 14 foot or less, and it's gonna do the job. It may look like a flail mower, but those of us in the room know differently. That has a specific job. Once you pulverize, you can incorporate, as I mentioned earlier, and we're still having navel orangeworm issues. To completely erase the problem is taking pistachios, where you'll see large growers actually sweeping like almonds. South Valley does a lot of that. They'll actually, after they shake the pistachio tree, they'll run their sweepers and actually windrow it. Bring this device in and pulverize it. So you're eliminating that food source that keeps them there in their life cycle. There's no food source, no insects. If we have plenty of rains, the rain will flood them out, but not like pulverizing. Sprays also, leaf-footed bug, even though, where's Jake? Even though that's an almond, that leaf-footed, that guy right there is devastating. Because really, all he's doing is, if you had a fine picture, he's got almost like what we're venturing in right now, mosquito infestation in Bakersfield, is he actually will just tap in that layer, and once he does on an almond, and if it's soft enough, he's penetrating, and that nutlet will either two things, it dies or it turns brown. Pistachios, you're turning that color. Pistachios, they want it like walnuts. They want that nice, pristine color of meat, no stains, because that just becomes a score of grading defects that they have recorded at the processor level. So maintaining insects at that time is what's going on. Okay. Anti-sprayer. Most of your spray rigs, I mean, 500 gallons, I mean, that's what a grower seems to fit his need. Maybe his water truck or water wagon fits that in its cycle of rotation, length of rows, how many passes can he make, what is the dilution rate, or is he 100 gallons an acre or so forth. Most of your larger commercials, no less than 6. You're heavy into citrus, I mean, 1,000 gallons is really nice, because of if I'm going out, I'm doing any one type of spray, or whether it's scale or we need to wash a tree, to get that machine to get from a 1/4 mile run or 1/8 mile run to get it out, you got to have gallons. But a lot of traditional growers still have 500s, but I always 600 should be your baseline. Okay. Now we're nearing the finish line. With these newer varieties, as I mentioned, Golden Hills, Lost Hills, those will be your first shake, usually between 5 and 7 days before your traditional Kern varieties. There are some other new varieties that are still being tested that aren't really commercially out yet. Harvesting, again, it all varies. People want to know. I can give you the numbers really quick. In almonds, you need the sequence of, if you've got a shaker, you need 2 sweepers. If you got 2 sweepers, and you're going to have a harvester and 2 shuttles and an elevator. It's that sequence of events. On a per acre basis, that's what they accommodate each other as a sequence. In pistachios, it's the same as non-pearl harvest. You don't have enough equipment, you don't have enough transportation. So to me to tell you what is the synchronizing system of pistachio harvesting, as far as a shaker and your catch frame, you're going to have a shaker, the catch has its cart, and then each one has its two shuttles. So just there again, I can't even say do the math, but if you've got 100 acres, you're probably going to be fine with a machine. If you've got 500 acres, you're probably going to have 4 to 6 machines, and then it just multiplies on the backside. One unit's going to have at least 2 shuttles, and it could be a cold machine, OMC, Thomas machines, it doesn't matter, but that's kind of a sequence of equipment needed. And it's all about time. When pistachios, when that husk softens and it can actually come off of that, yes.
Would you
Am I
mind,
the only one with questions?
I guess, would you
Let's keep
mind
it that way.
at explaining if I'm gonna run, bin carts or not? If I'm a grower or, for equipment differences, right?
If I look at it, I was in Arvin the other day, still doing things the old-fashioned way, using bank out carts for the tractor pull behind. That might be practical and economics as today. How much ground do you have to cover? And again, in pistachios, it's a start to finish it. There's no time in almonds. We shake it today, maybe we let it sit down 5 days or so, depending on atmosphere. And after that 5th day, we go in there with sweepers. 3 days after sweepers, we check moisture. If it's a go, sweep and pick up. Pistachios, you don't have that variability. When the orchard is ready, it's ready. So if you've got a smaller footprint and you want to go with a tractor and a bank out behind the harvester once he exits the row, that's doable on smaller acreage. But if your clients or your growers are larger base growers, it's all about time. And I like the combination, keeping equipment as unified as you can. So I know some people like a Thomas shuttle versus a Co shuttle or an OMC shuttle or a Jackrabbit. Production that I'm in to move and have a grower back in, because I've been a grower, and I know what it's like to get that product out of the field so he can get back to his cultural practices. Even though he might have 1 or 2 more varieties in that orchard, it's all about time. If I'm moving slow, we run 5125 mLs, Flory 860, twin rod, Jackrabbit cart with a Jackrabbit shuttle and a Jackrabbit elevator. And that's as smooth as you can get. Once you teach your guys to unload on the go, it's pretty hard to do that today with some of our labor force because they're not reoccurring. We're training a lot. But that equipment gives you the flexibility to not have to stop. And it's about time. Because we're up against an 8-hour day. I can't tell a grower first thing, especially if it's the father-son, you guys park that equipment awfully early and the sun doesn't set till around 7:30 during this time of the year. But it's all about that time frame, wages, overtime, how much time can I afford at the rates I'm charging, how long can I be here? So with that combination of equipment, what I've dealt with in pistachios, the Co, OMC, I like the Co. I like Co equipment. I was introduced into the Co almond shaker back when Orchard Right went from the industrial John Deere engine to the Cat engine. Not gonna have it. But that made, and the reason I say that is when you're a grower, you might have a little more time when you're in the custom business, but as a grower, I want to talk to one set of people. And again, it's not because I'm being paid to say this. I get discounts. The Camp family has made my life simple in accomplishing the task. The equipment that they put forth for you people to sell, it's a perfect fit. The economics are there. When that first happened, Orchard Right's a good shaker. Don't get me wrong, it's a good shaker. But I find it, am I talking to Quinn or am I talking to Kern Machinery? If I'm talking about a Co piece of equipment, a Flory piece of equipment, I'm interacting with those people. And that service team, I'm telling you, doesn't get any better. 5125 ml, number 4 injector line is leaking again. Sunday morning, it's ready to go. What's the product serial number? Flash it to me, I can tell you exactly what's happening. I got the part, I got it on the truck. I only talked to one person. So when you're in that custom business, that's all I need. I don't need all the other infrastructure of one can't get there in time. I don't know if Orchard Right felt that was a negative move on their side, but that was about 2008. And I think that year we purchased, I think, 6 co-shakers. With that John Deere Industrial, life is easy. I'm talking to the same personnel, and the help. I can't mention it enough. For that service team, there's not enough of them. But Cody out there on a Saturday or Sunday morning getting it done. There's not many out in the industry. There's too many that I deal with because I provide a tremendous amount of equipment to a tremendous amount of growers and clients. And there's nothing more disturbing. It's a Monday. I have too much compassion and drive. It's not good enough. It's not the right answer. But is there another slide in there? Are we good?
There's more.
You guys ready for quizzes?
Ready for the next?
So pretty much we're at harvest at that time. Again, those early varieties, you're coming into harvest pretty much that last week of August with those newer varieties, and then September it's just run till you're finished.
Brad, do you see anything different in if it's organic versus conventional growing, or is there much organic farming going on in Pistachio?
Not that I know of. Anyone that I'm working with, it's all conventional. And we had 2 growers with about 400 acres of independent almonds organic. From planting to those trees have to be 8th or 9th leaf. And this harvest, they just discontinued organics on 400 acres. I think it has to fit a portfolio depending on your acreage. When I was developing, out of about 9,000 acres, you need to have about, I didn't like any, but 200 acres just to show not only yourself, but the industry that you're interacting with maybe some of the new nuances of farming, but it's very tasteful. I've got one client that has about 150 acres, and he's debating this Nonpareil, Monterey, and Bennett Hickman variety, and he's debating if he's going to stay in it. And I think it's just economics. Mr. Camp, is the money there? Spain was a big pull for a while for the almond milk. They're organic, so they needed organic almonds from California to fulfill their organic almond milk scenario. So maybe at $4 to $5 a pound, it made some sense. But costs are so, and I'm preaching to the choir, costs are everything right now, and it's changing the dynamics. Where we're seeing this newer equipment, the older equipment's not going to make it. Where we're seeing technology, is Gus the answer? Yes. The time you need it, the length of time you need it, environment, personnel. It's not to put anybody, technology is not to put anybody into the unemployment line. Because we're going to take that talent and reconfigure them, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be one man running 3 Gus machines with that laptop right at the end of the row. iPhone is tasking. You find the right people is what I'm getting at. There's employees in your wheelhouse that favor that. And again, you have your shaker, catch frame, receiver. Behind that would be, of course, the cart that carries a product. Okay. Same thing. If you figure again, the amount of, I can't give you a good number as I can in almonds, but in pistachios, say our footprint is 19 by 18 or 19 by 17. So if I'm 19 by 17, 135 trees per acre, you shake that tree for approximately, say, 5 seconds. You just start implementing the math, how much acreage a setup can actually cover. So one co-shaker, we think it can equate to about between 15 and 18 acres in a work shift. Now, what's a work shift? Some growers opt and say, well, we're running a 10-hour shift. I'll take on the 2 hours of overtime. On our side, I have to be careful about custom because we're at a fixed number. I don't have any way of recouping that expense. So I'm my own worst enemy. I fight my accounting staff. I fight my daughter. And Dad, you gotta charge them more. I know what fuel costs. I know what labor costs are. I know what chemical costs are. And if we can be reasonable and provide the job well done, and both parties are happy, then I think that's my richness. Somebody, I don't know who's traveling up in, was it Fraser Park? Was that at one point? Yeah, it wasn't me. It wasn't any of you in this room because you wouldn't be here, right? But there is a such thing as loyalty, which is it's a scarce commodity, but there is some loyalty out there. But again, that timing, how many acres does this unit actually, there's so many variables. I can tell you a setup does about 18 acres. So how many acres or how many units would a grower actually need? Again, depends on his size and the time to get across it.
It's 18 acres a day? 18 acres a day, is it?
Approximately. And again, there's so many variables. We try to do the best even on the custom side, and the grower probably does the same. I did at least. Is when you on the off year you bring all this equipment into the shop and put it back into condition so that it's field ready to go back out and be as streamlined running as possible. But then again, it's how many times you go to that parts counter, man. That's. But this year was good. Tom didn't get to see me that much. It's not because I sent somebody else, but I did a couple times. But in the fall, October, it's almost like we're finishing the year, but yet we're rehydrating we're giving that orchard back what it gave us. We're broadcasting, even those are almonds, but it's the same philosophy. Whether we're tending to the middles, or I'm old-fashioned. If we can incorporate products utilizing double-line drip, some of your granular products, maybe yes, maybe no, but gypsum, composting, green waste, and it's not actually just to get the end factor back in by using compost. It's not doing it just for that. It's actually just a tilt of the soil, keeping the soil profile open for that water penetration, and that's a lot of what these products help and aid in doing. A lot of the bacterial product biodegrades other products that are naturally out on the orchard floor and helps keep that soil open. Okay. November, there again, zinc sprays. Borons, kind of put that in there. Boron is something that we always monitor in pistachios. It's like zinc in any plant, you can't get enough of it. I'm not saying that we're actually going to apply foliar boron to a tree, but during the nut set or the fill, that's more of a time frame when we're actually implementing. But zinc it probably should be more zinc sulfate instead of that boron there, but zinc sulfate is what we'd be putting down, and there again, that's to sever the leaf blade so that the tree will go into dormancy. Okay. Yeah, this is a nice tool, good for pistachios, because pistachios, we're not looking for that firm floor as we are in almonds during harvest. It's a good way to incorporate, but remember what I said, trials have been done on incorporating. If it's not, that product is still there, it's going to allow for that insect to continue to live. You've got to get rid of the food source, and that's the nut itself. Pull behind units, nice units, self-propelled. Okay. Now that everybody's educated, there's no questions. We're finished. Okay, she said we gotta go eat.
No, not yet, you're okay. We have a quiz too.
For your winter shaking, you always remove the tarps, basically with the shakers,
Yes.
or you like to use the almond shakers?
We've done that. We've gone out to pistachio orchards and utilized almond shakers, and basically you're taking the wheel brushes off. You're kind of stripping it down. Same thing on the actual pistachio shaker unit itself. Dismantling it, you're shaking. That's all you're doing.
I have a question, Brad. On the average, how many trees per acre do they plant?
On average, again, it goes to what most growers I see today is a 19 by 18, so that gives you what, 127 trees per acre.
Okay.
There's some orchards out there that are still 19-foot row, and the reason that 19-foot row maintains pretty much a firm existence is equipment compatibility. You know, if you take that Gus machine and you put it out there and you spray the orchard, what is your coverage? Am I getting half the tree on the left side, half the tree on the right side, then I'm coming back to that opposite row and getting that reach across? So if we started separating that in almonds, and that's a lot of our almond situation, we're having these engine drives, as we do in citrus, to move the product across. Well, environmentalists aren't liking that because we're going beyond the target zone. So I still feel that most people in developing pistachio orchards today are 19-foot rows down. They may move it a foot either way. They may go 19, 18 feet. So if it was 17 feet, it would be what, 135? I think. Yeah.
How many pollinators do they put per acre?
Generally, for the male trees is traditionally what's done is there's about one male tree for about 24, 25 female trees. So it's in a planting, you're putting male trees every fifth row. So every fifth row, and then down that row, every fifth tree has a male tree. So say if we're Golden Hills or Lost Hills, then you're gonna select what pollinator. Rootstock is different. Rootstock, traditionally right now, UCB1, and there's about 3 others that are new, that are tolerant of whether it be nematodes is always one of the big things on a permanent tree. You know, what's the nematode count? What's the species of nematodes that we're dealing with? So sometimes these stocks are tolerant with the pathogens that are in the soil. So that's some of that selection. But also pollinators, it's the timing of when pollinators, either one gets too far ahead of the other, as I had mentioned earlier. If the year where we had extensive drought, dry, we didn't have any cool, I think we were pretty much 70s all the way through January, February, March, and even going into April, we started heating up into the 80s, and the male trees were not were not waking up, and the female trees were already even doing some of that as a picture, some of that leaf out. Well, you're done then. Because them being deciduous and male-female, bees don't do the work as we do flowering almonds, cherries, blueberries, that need bees to pollinate and carry the nectar over. Pistachios are dependent on that male and nature with wind. If you don't get wind, that's why that west side is really great. You've always got a wind out there. It's hell on herbicide because you can't herbicide until late at night because there's no wind. But daytime, that's what's moving the pollen from the male tree to the female tree. The wind is what's being the carrier. And then again, there's selections. Is there a right way, wrong way? Not necessarily. It's what works for you in that area, your climate. It's like an irrigation system. Not necessarily right or wrong, what works for your area and your climate.
I got one more question. If you mechanically hedge, is it still necessary to hand prune?
Yes.
Okay. And why?
You're doing a number of things. You're adjusting, you're managing the crop, your crop load. And you're continuously keeping that tree uniform of open sunlight penetration so that you don't have what we've seen in a lot of the almonds with the hybrid rootstocks. And what do we see? We see shading out. If you take an orchard that's almonds that have been shaded out, there's some pistachios out there, and you'll see a whole arm with literally nothing on it. Well, you've lost that area of production. But pistachios, you'll always see pruned unless abandoned. They're always pruned and they're always hedged. And that's basically keeping the canopy managed and open for sunlight. It's also good for air movement, but there because pollination, we're depending on nature and wind. If we have more of a thatch density, even at that time of tree there is no green vegetation at pollination for that period. But just having that tree canopy open for sunlight and air penetration, that's all it is. We see trees get too large to not mechanically hedge or top, then we're going to be hand pruning it, labor intensified. It's already going to be intensified by selecting the openness by hand. Again, right or wrong answer, if I didn't prune this year, what are the consequences? The year you finally decide to go back and prune, probably the second year, because you're going to find out what you did wrong. It'll be so labor intensified and costly to get it out. Pruning already can run you right at about $1,000 to $1,200 an acre. So keeping it, and it's crop management. It's a number of issues, but air movement, sunlight, two of the biggest. You got something brewing in there.
Alex, Chelsea, what did you look for before harvest, and then what are the biggest risks of going long on harvest?
The risk on going long, simple, staining of the kernel itself. So again, I couldn't sit here and say exactly how many units a grower, I mean, if we sat down and we did the math, you know, how many acres do you have? How many acres are we harvesting, or what's harvestable this year? And you're gonna do it all in-house. Then we could come up with that equation. So say a setup does about 18 acres in a work shift. So now we gotta figure out how many acres do you have before you, and that's when we have to implement, okay, here's the count. So if I have 4 units, X number of acres a day or shift. So
Is it staining due to insects or rain?
on where you'll find insects being a problem is if you do on your almond variety, if you implement 2 shakes, you might go through on your first shake and have 1% to 2%, if any, on navel orange worm damage or infestation. When you come back and do that second shake, that's when the pressure takes off in that period of time. You're harvesting first. Now to get back in, to do the second shake, to spray and product, that window of harvest intervals is limited here. So seeing where guys have gone out and harvest and do another navel orangeman spray. Again, it's the expense of it. So this year, what did pistachios start out this year? Back to the grower. Yeah, so if you look at between $1.45, $1.50, I'm not spraying again. And as for some of our almond people this year, what were almonds started out? Almonds were about $1.40. And this lady has about 413 acres. 3 sprays, mating disruption, and she's still on nonpareils, 12% damage. But pistachios, yeah, it's devastating. You don't make it, there's no return. Going into this year, if everything goes right, no rain, you've got 3,200 pounds per acre almond, and everything goes well, you're still, it's the number of expenses, the economy of almonds is too high. You have my card, feel free anytime. You've got a question, you've got a grower, you've got something. Again, when I started this in 2019, it's just, how can I help people? And that's basically what it, how can I help? I'm not here for hire, I'm not here to say, well, I'm consulting with you, so it's, you know, maybe I'll give her a discount.
Thank you.
But I'm here to help, to see people not err on the wrong side, because the way things are, there's no room. There's no room for error. You gotta be on. Water expenses, most districts right now, between Blue Ridge districts, is the groundwater charge you're getting $216 an acre foot to use your own well. So the economics, so if I'm forced to buy surface water without any surcharges, lift charges, it's gonna be $196. If I wanna use my well, it's $216. So the economics, and that's why I'm here, just to help. What equipment does a grower need? Because I've seen that. I've seen growers buy equipment, and something as simple as you want to drive away laughing. Call me when you get that new V blade in. Well, what should I buy? Well, you're 22, get a 14 foot. Okay. Front V's, not even touching the ground. And he calls us excited. Hey, Brad, I got it. My guy's out there if you want to go check it out. But I've already let him know, I'm here to help you. I'm not going to come out and charge you. I'm here to help you so you do it right, because I'm going to do your harvesting. That ground preparation of almonds, if it's done right, makes my job easier. It's easier wear and tear on the harvester versus going out there and you find this mound, and then I've got a little edge of almonds on each side.
All right, does everybody have their quizzes? Are you gonna grade it yourself, or are you
I
gonna
never
grade
knew
your
what
neighbor?
you guys were up against until I
Grade it
got to
yourself,
this.
and yourself.
Grade it
Being a
yourself.
grower.
Okay, Chuck has the
But
answers.
it's allowed me to turn and say, hey,
So-
this is exciting, and I want to help. So,
We're gonna answer our quizzes. If we have anyone that has a tiebreaker, you're gonna have to come up with a really good question
To ask the
to ask
tiebreaker.
them.
So what do you
Alright.
all have for number 1? Correct. Number 2? A.
Hey,
Number 3? And this is actually A, B, and D. But don't, again, you can get down to each one of those. If you have anything except the Kerman, accept your answer, okay? What is number 4? Yes. Now this is kind of a trick one right here. Even the book says one thing and our answer said something else. What month does the pistachio harvest start?
B.
The book says late August because new varieties are late August. So it says right in the book late August. So,
it's giving you, it's about a 5 to 7 days window of getting started. So the new varieties are helping not only get your equipment, your force out there, but it's also getting
Wonderful to take.
processing. They out Furman right now, so you don't have that collision.
So it's,
Okay, stand up if you got all 5 questions. Right.
Start harvesting late August, which is 2, 3,
Five
so the wait.
Stand up if you got all 5
say
questions
what the
right.
book said.
Yeah.
Do you find backpack blowers,
So who got it all
pollination
right?
helping
Stand
at
up if you got it all
all?
right.
Good job, Mike.
Like they try to squad with blowers or anything?
They have, I don't have a lot of experience with it, but they have,
Way to go, Buck.
Okay, so.
taken not a gator, but like a quad track, and actually with the blower device, take the
Let's
pollen.
bring the 5 people, the people up here.
Like I told people in Pistachio.
You got 5 questions right.
Almonds are kind of entertaining.
Come on, bring them up, bring them up.
Pistachio.
Everybody come in the middle.
Or cherry guys.